Hello, everyone. We are just getting ready to begin John Smith, and this is the chapter we're going to be reading. I've linked it on Canvas next to this video. If you want to not listen to this video, that's completely fine. You'll be answering these questions. If you want to go read it on your own, go for it, and just answer these questions, and you'll be on your own time pace. I'm going to be reading it for those of you who would like a little bit of extra support with it. But again, our goal is to understand what was in the article and then be able to answer these questions. It is always a good idea to read the questions before you do the reading so that you know what's going to be asked of you. So in the spirit of that, number one, what were three characteristics Pocahontas liked about John Smith? Number two, on page 29 in the bottom purple box, and that would be down here, page 29, the first page, there is a description of life in Jamestown during the first summer. This is an example of what? A primary source or a secondary source. Number three, how would you describe John Smith's past? Did he live a quiet life of learning and never stopped asking questions? Or he had one adventure after another and escaped danger more than most humans? Or C, he dreamed of having adventures but was never quite brave enough to leave home. Number four, describe the first Christmas in Jamestown. Number five, what was John Smith's motto? A motto is a saying that he says all the time. Number six, what three things did John Smith have that the Indians wanted? Number seven, what is the Indian word for chief? Number eight, what does treason mean? And number nine, who made the map below? Okay, so those are what we're going to be asking. I am not going to be stopping in the reading to say, oh, look, there's your answer, and have you write it down. I might for the first one, but you should be listening for the rest of these as you go. And I'll be collecting these when you come back to school. Okay, the other thing about History of Us, it is the best thing we read all year in my classroom, and we can't forget to read the sidebars. These are called sidebars when they're to the left or the right of this line. And we can't forget to look at pictures and captions. History of Us has a lot of these things, and we can't leave them alone. Okay? So here we go. Chapter 5, John Smith. The Jamestown colony might not have survived without Captain John Smith. He was a tough, no-nonsense man who worked hard and expected everyone else to do the same. Some people admired him, others hated him. Pocahontas admired him and saved his life twice. She was a bright-eyed Indian princess who was about 12 years old when the settlers first came to Virginia. The pale-skinned men and their strange ways intrigued her, and she came to visit them often. Sometimes she just turned cartwheels in the middle of the Jamestown settlement. Sometimes she brought food. It was John Smith who seemed to interest her the most. In him, she recognized a person whose intelligence and curiosity matched her own. Like her father, the great Powhatan, Smith seemed fearless. Many of the settlers hated Smith, but they recognized that he was a leader. When he went back to England, even his enemies missed him. They said he was a braggart. That means somebody who brags a lot about themselves. They said he was a braggart, and he couldn't possibly have done all the things he said he had done. He might have exaggerated a little bit, but he really did do those things, like selling his school books and running away to live on the ocean, or going off to Hungary, that's a different country in Europe, to fight the Turks. The Turks are people from Turkey, the country of Turkey. There, in Turkey, on one bloody afternoon, Smith beheaded 3 Turks. That means he cut the heads off 3 Turkish people. A grateful Hungarian prince granted him a coat of arms with 3 Turkish heads emblazoned on it, and that's right here. Smith's Turks' heads coat of arms. The Latin word means vanquish and live. So these are 3 heads of people John Smith cut their heads off. He wasn't a Hungarian hero for long. He was captured and sent as a slave to Constantinople, where a Turkish woman bought him. But her relatives didn't think much of him, and he was sold again. This time, he killed his master, escaped, got thrown into the Mediterranean Sea, wandered through Russia, Poland, and Germany, doing other heroic things, and ended up in North America fighting pirates. You guys, I told you, he was like the best kind of superhero. It's kind of hard to believe everything he did, but it's true. He did do it all. Up here it says John Smith arranged the exchange of an English boy, Tom Savage, for an Indian boy named Nemontauk. Savage became an adopted son of Powhatan, learned the Algonquian language, and later was able to translate for the natives. For the colonists. Nemontauk went to England with Christopher Newport. And then it says, that first summer in Jamestown, the settlers barely made it. Our drink was water, our lodging, castles in the air. That means they had no homes. They reported, with this lodging and diet, our extreme toil in bearing and planting palisades strained and bruised us. You can imagine, I told you how hard it was to build a palisade. From May through September, those that escaped lived upon sturgeon, that's a kind of fish, and sea crabs. 50 in this time were buried. Okay? So one of your questions does ask, it explains life in the first summer, so you can answer number 2. And it already says up here what characteristics Pocahontas liked about John Smith. So stay tuned into your questions. I'm not going to point that out anymore. Okay. And it says here, those early days weren't all misery. After their first Christmas in Virginia, Captain Smith wrote, we were never more merry. That means happy, nor fed more plenty of good oysters, fish, flesh, wild fowl. That's like birds, like chickens, turkeys, ducks, and good bread, nor never had better fires in England than in the dry, smoky houses of, these are the natives who live nearby. So they have plenty of food. They're very happy and wonderful fires after their first Christmas. And then it says, in a page from John Smith's General History of Virginia, Smith lies captive before Chief Powhatan, while Pocahontas pleads for his life to be saved. So here's John Smith lying there. They're getting ready to cut his head off, and Pocahontas begs her father to save John Smith, and he does. We aren't sure that's a real story, but possibly. Naturally, someone who liked adventure the way John Smith did would be attracted to the adventure of a new world. Besides, like Sir Walter Raleigh, he had an idea that America could someday be an English land. He understood that there was more to be gained in the English world than gold. He realized that there were great opportunities for men and women with energy and courage. John Smith was 28, that's it, 28 years old, when he took over the leadership of the Jamestown colony, and things were in a bad way. This was his motto: if any would not work, neither should he eat. That's what you and I talked about in class. If you don't work, you don't eat. That was his motto. There he worked. There were some grumblers, but everyone wanted to eat, so everyone started working. Smith went and got food from the Indians. He learned their language, and he learned the ways they hunted and fished. He had been a soldier, and he was tough, but he was also fair and honest. The Powhatans soon understood that. They respected him, and he respected them. They called him Werowance, which means chief in the native language. They called him Werowance, or chief of Jamestown, and that was what he was. The Native Americans seemed undecided about how to act toward those strangers on their land. What would you have done if you were a Powhatan? How would you have treated the English leader, John Smith? He had the goods they wanted, axes and shovels and blankets, so they traded with him. He was a natural leader. He took his English goods to their villages, and he came back to Jamestown with boatloads of corn. They told him of the prediction that men from the east would destroy their villages. He told them he came in peace. Still, the Indians couldn't seem to make up their minds. Sometimes they entertained Smith with dances and feasting. Other times they tried to kill him. Once he was brought before an Indian werowance, and remember that means chief, and he expected to die. He pulled out his compass, showed how it worked, talked about the heavens and the earth, and soon had a tribe of friends. They didn't want to kill him anymore. Another time he was taken to the great chief Powhatan, who seemed to have several Indian warriors ready to beat his brains out. But Pocahontas, who was Chief Powhatan's favorite daughter, came to his rescue. She put her head on top of Smith's head, and Powhatan let him live. Was it a prearranged ceremony, or did Pocahontas actually save his life? No one knows for sure, but the Indians ended up adopting Smith into their tribe and making him an honorary chief. Now he was a member of Pocahontas's family. When some other Indians tried to ambush Smith, Pocahontas warned him of the trap. Cats are supposed to have 9 lives. John Smith had even more. While exploring the Chesapeake Bay, he was stung by a deadly stingray and was in so much pain that he had his grave dug. He was ready to be buried, but he recovered and he ate the stingray. The place where this happened, near the mouth of the Rappahannock River in Virginia, is now called Stingray Point. Isn't that funny, you guys? You could go visit that place today. John Smith was asleep in his boat when some gunpowder exploded. It, quote, tore the flesh from his body and thighs 9 to 10 inches square. To quench the tormenting fire, frying him in his clothes, he leaped overboard and in the deep river, where he was near drowned. Smith was so badly wounded that he had to return to England. Pocahontas was told he was dead. John Smith never got back to Virginia, but he did get to New England, which he named, and he mapped its coast as he had mapped out much of Virginia. He wrote many books and became famous because of them. I am no compiler by hearsay, but have been a real actor, he said. And so he was. We still read his books today because they're so interesting. Okay? And what he means by this quote is, I'm not just guessing about all this. I actually saw and lived it all. And then this map up here should look familiar to you. This is Roanoke Island. This is Croatoan. And these are the Outer Banks of North Carolina, even though it's labeled Virginia. And it says this engraving is a copy of a 1587 map of Virginia by John White that influenced map makers for decades. The area shown is now part of the Carolinas. At the mouth of the Big River, in the middle, is Roanoke Island, and it's labeled right there. Okay. In some parts of our country, when a criminal is found guilty of a serious crime, such as a murder, he can be sentenced to death by the judge. A death sentence is called capital punishment. How did capital punishment start in this country? The English brought the tradition with them. Some Indian tribes practiced capital punishment too. It didn't take long for the settlers to use capital punishment, just a few months. The first execution was in the Jamestown colony the year they arrived, 1607. The victim was not a common criminal, but a member of an important English family and one of the 7-man ruling council of the Jamestown colony. His name was Captain George Kendall. His crime was treason. Treason means you betray your own country. The colonists believed Kendall was a spy for the Spanish. Kendall tried to escape aboard the ship Discovery, but was captured and condemned to die. He was executed or killed by a firing squad. That means they stood him up and a whole bunch of people fired bullets into him. Treason, betraying your own country, is still a capital crime today. So go ahead and finish up your questions, guys, and I'll look forward to seeing what you put.